Mhm.
Well. Welcome to another episode of Real Turkey Channel presented by Atilla Yesilada. In each broadcast, we try to cover different topics about Turkey and other emerging markets. Today, we're going to talk about journalism and human rights in Turkey. Actually, there is not much to talk about because neither exists. But one of the very seldom, rare examples, a unique specimen of who is still trying to do impartial journalism is with us today, Ms. Sedef Kabaş. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. It's a great enjoyment as well as honor for me to be here.
Yeah, she really is a wonderful person who is also a brave human rights defender. Her only problem is she went to Boston College, and that really is not unforgivable for someone who went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. Okay, so
And plus, I'm a Fulbright scholar, which makes things become even worse.
Yeah, we have a truly blue collar person here who is fighting for the rights of the underclass. But all joking aside, Ms. Sedef Kabaş is a first-hand witness of how difficult it is to do journalism in Turkey, and she has been persecuted several times. But before we get to that, Ms. Kabaş, I want to get your opinion on Mr. Erdogan's promised reforms. One side is economic, never mind that. But there is also the promise of legal reforms. Do you expect anything substantial to come out of it?
Well, even the question itself, I guess, contains the answer in it, because you asked the way, like, do you expect him to keep his word and promises, which he hasn't done, unfortunately, in the last 18 years or so. So who can talk about making some reforms? A new government may talk about making some reforms to change things in politics, in judicial system, in human rights issues, so on and so forth. But AKP, which is the ruling party, the existing government, I don't believe that has any right to talk about reforms, especially in the fields of justice, like in the field of economy, because they are the ones, this existing government, which spoiled both. So they're talking in a way as if they have just come out of an election and a government which is newly elected and started to make things from scratch, which is not the case. I mean, there were 18 years behind them, which they had many opportunities to have done things much better. So I would like to believe in what they say, but unfortunately, I have no doubt that they're not going to do what they're saying.
What do you think it is, Mr. Erdogan, who is the problem, or is the judiciary so politicized that even if Erdogan were to let go, we would never get justice in this country?
Well, I guess the system does not let the judicial system to decide to make decisions on partial basis, because especially after this so-called presidential system, where we used to have parliamentary system earlier, and it's been changed with a referendum, which is also a questionable referendum. But anyway, I'm not going to go into details at the moment. But many believe that it was not a real election. At least the results were not like real. The way they announce it, there are doubts that they play around the results, so on and so forth. So even if this is the case, now the system is changed and it's so-called the parliamentary presidential system, which actually really ruined the balance that we need, check and balance that we need in a political system anywhere in the world, not just specifically in Turkey. Anywhere in the world, you need check and balance in economy, in politics, even if you're running a small company. But with this system, the whole thing changed into a form where the head of the executive, which is in this case AKP, and the head of AKP is Erdogan, who is at the same time the president, who is not impartial at all. He's also leading the ruling government. And also he's somehow holding the power, I would say, to rule or to manage or shape, change the decisions and the going of the parliament, the assembly, as well as the judicial system. The assembly has lost its function.
Right.
What I mean by simply saying, like, if you're a butcher, your responsibility to cut meat, right?
Right.
If you are a bakery, you bake breads. If you're a journalist, you do some news. If you are a broadcaster, you do some, broadcasting. Any profession you can think of, there is a main occupation that you have to pursue, and the main responsibility of the assembly, Turkish assembly, is to make laws, to issue laws, and this function has abolished.
Yes.
So the assembly, the present, the ongoing assembly is out of its function. The executive system is all in the hands of Erdogan, and also he has a strong power, or in a way a shadow, I would say, on the judiciary system as well. Only recently, this week, he appointed a new member to the Constitutional Court who has a great fame about some prosecuting some political cases like Gezi, like December 17 and 25 corruption cases, as well as Osman Kavala case. And when you look at his decisions, all of them turn out to be in favor of the government.
Yeah, apparently.
And this man,
yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
And this man has been recently appointed as a member of the Constitutional Court, which is the high Supreme Court in Turkey. And there are some rumors that he's not just going to be a member, but he's going to be the head of the high Supreme Court, Constitutional Court.
You also...
So in this case, who influences whom? I mean, that's why when we become very critical of the system and refer it as a one-man rule, we face trial cases. But
right.
What is ongoing is speedily sweeping Turkey in such a system where everything, including the media as well, 95% of the media is also under the influence or the suppression, under the influence or in the hands of the palace. I mean, so-called the palace. I mean, the AKP, the ruling party. When I say the palace media, I mean they are just following the words or the deeds of Erdogan, who sits in a palace. So they also call it the palace media. And 95% of the existing media is being referred to the palace media. So only maybe 5%, 3% of the whole system is trying to still pursue an independent journalism. So in such a scene where there is hardly any independent media, where the judiciary is under the control of the government, where assembly has lost its function, where the whole executive system is in the hands of one man, how could you talk about can you talk about human rights?
Now, you also do a fascinating show at Tele1, one of the few independent TV stations, still broadcasting.
I try my best.
Yeah, still broadcasting, and I never miss it. You are also on top of the current events. Now, there are two opposing streams of rumors. The first is that this crackdown is going to get worse to the point where, you know, Erdogan and Bahçeli will never hold or lose elections. And the second one is exactly opposite of that. that Erdogan is trying to ditch Bahçeli, his nationalist partner, and he may even relinquish the position of party chairman to, I suppose, gain some credibility as the president of the entire Turkish people. What do you think? Where do you stand on that? What do you hear?
Well, the coalitions may change, may stay, but the real argument is about there is a misunderstanding or misperception of democracy. What I mean when people think of democracy, they think that from one election to another, which is every a couple of years, let's say 3 or 4 years, although recently have been like very frequent elections in Turkey, but people think that there is an election and then you go and vote and that's it. But this is a very simplified version of democracy, which does not reflect the real meaning of it. We have to be talking about participative democracy in today's world. And in this sense, even the elections is not consisted of just the last day where people go and vote. Let's look at the period right before the elections, where there should be real competitiveness, where there should be like all candidates of each party should have the right to talk or to communicate with the public, which can only or mostly be done through media. And when the media is closed to all other alternatives, you just get, or the majority of the public just get to hear the voice of the ruling party or the coalition government, which is in this case AKP and MHP, Bahçeli and Erdogan. But how about others? They don't even get to hear the voice or the critics of other journalists, the critics of other academicians or economists or business people in media. So how would you think, like, whether you know what is really going on? If you don't get the sense or idea of what is really going on, what are the real facts, and if you're just exposed to a kind of dark and deep propaganda of AKP, how would you be able to vote in the right way or in the interest of yourself or in the interest of your country's future? So I think this is one of the main problems. Even if we have elections, I'm not talking about specifically any political party, but I am critical of the system, the present system. The election is not just consist of one single day. Earlier, you have the right to do some
equal access
PR,
to media and financial resources.
I mean, there is not a competitive atmosphere. And also, as you know, the alternative media channels, some TV channels or some newspapers are constantly being punished, fined, or banned by some so-called councils, like
the watchdog.
Say,
the watchdog.
The Radio and Television Supreme Council.
Yeah.
Like, which is supposedly need to be impartial, but they are imposing all these fines to alternative channels just because they are broadcasting some critical news of the government. And it's the same case with Press Advertising Agency, where they constantly preventing alternative newspapers to receive some commercial and advertisements, which cuts their source of income.
Right.
So under these circumstances, there is not a real election. Put aside being the results of it questionable.
Now,
so in this case, I don't know whether they will say the coalition of the MHP and AKP will stay or not. I mean, this is a tiny little argument when you look at the big picture of it. Things may change anytime in Turkey, by the way.
Let's
24 hours is a very, very long time in Turkey.
Yeah. Well, by the time we broadcast this, we might have a new government. I mean, we have a country where one of the opposition leaders, one of the opposition leaders, Davutoglu, says Erdogan will be toppled by the deep state. For Christ's sake, this is mad. But I want to talk about social
Or
media.
your viewers in other countries may surprise if they hear that Bahçeli, who is now the member of the coalition with Erdogan, Bahçeli, the leader of MHP, which is the nationalistic party in Turkey, was one of the leading political figures who was highly critical of Erdogan, and he was the one who was referring or calling Erdogan as a big thief. He was a big theft, you know. I mean, he was being accused of being involved in big corruption and fraud, and this was Bahçeli who was making all these accusations, and now they are partners, political partners.
These are, you're throwing topics that would take hours to digest, and I will get to them. But first of all, we know that the social media networks are becoming too powerful, etc., which I suppose in the West is a problem. But do you think social media is an alternative to complete state control of mainstream media in Turkey? Is there any freedom there, or is it making any difference to people's opinions?
Well, in countries like Turkey, there are two aspects. For example, why Twitter is so popular in Turkey, because people cannot get real news when they watch primetime news in big channels, I will say,
yes.
which we used to call at least mainstream media, but this is also very questionable whether they are really placing or deserving the definition of being a mainstream media.
More like
that's
a
why
one-stream media. Go ahead.
One-stream media, or partisan media, or the palace media, which has no concern of having real viewers, readers, or listeners, because what I believe, Mr. Yesilada, I believe they are broadcasting, all these channels are broadcasting news only for one viewer. And they are writing all this news on these newspapers only for just one reader.
Yeah.
As far as they get approval of this one reader, viewer, and listener, who is in this case Erdogan, they're fine, you know. So that's why I have difficulty to refer them as a mainstream media. But if we come to your question, Twitter is so popular because people cannot get real news when they watch this so-called media. So they try to benefit from what is being said or discussed on social media, such as Twitter. But at the same time, there are all these YouTube channels, news channels, and news websites. And the number of them is also growing, which is a very good sign of looking for more independent channels where news are being made and broadcasting are made. But if you think in, again, overall Turkey, these believers or followers of social media are mostly those people who live in big cities,
right,
who are relatively more educated, who are belong to a kind of to medium or upper class. But if you take into consideration the whole population, or the total number of voters, or the demography of voters, how would you be able to reach someone in a village which is right out of Tokat, let's say?
right.
They don't have any access to listen to you or to watch me. No access at all. Because in such places, in rural parts of Turkey, in all these villages or small towns, or in relatively big cities like Kayseri, Tokat, Adıyaman, let's say, you think they have access to alternative newspapers or alternative news channels, or they are aware of these social media websites or YouTube channels? I hardly believe that they have.
No,
so
I'm
when
not
they
here
don't
to
have any
argue. I
access,
just, no. And I think
when they
that
don't
shows
have
in, that shows in voting patterns as well. I mean, as you move from interior Anatolia towards the coasts, the opposition parties do better. Now,
they don't even get the chance to hear one single question which is critical of the ruling party. one single question, if they happen to hear one single question, one simple news program, let's say, which is talking about the real facts, maybe they will also start thinking differently. By they don't even have any access. Maybe they are young children, but not many million families.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's
also
why
true.
media is still playing. And when I say media as a TV personality, I wish it was different, but it's not the case. I wish the power of TV diminish in Turkey, but still, uh, despite the growing power of social media, mainly it's TV again, which is influencing or affecting the perception of the outside world when Turkey is the case.
Now let's get to what happens to people who want to do independent journalism. I mean, it's not like they're just fired. There is some real price to be paid for,
Yes.
plying your trade, as they say. Give us a figure. Give us an overall view of how many journalists are in prison or being accused of being terrorists or aiding and abetting terrorism. I suppose this is the official charge. Go ahead.
Well, I just recently said that we are doing journalism at the expense of our lives.
No.
I mean, as you said, um, thousands of journalists in the last 10 years, or especially in the last 5 years, have been laid off. They're jobless, they're unemployed, and also many other hundreds of them have been detained. Many of them have put on trial. They are facing trials where they're being accused of even terrorists, and more than 100 or so are already in jail. And when it comes to the number of journalists prison, China ranks first. But I say if you and Turkey comes second.
You know,
And
prison
also I say
journalists per person, I think we beat China by
yes,
miles. I'm sorry, go ahead.
exactly. That's what I'm exactly saying. Report. Why I say like, okay, China maybe is number one, but look at the population of China.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
per
a country
thousand.
where you're talking about a population of 1,383,000, let's say,
We're definitely
83
ahead of
million
them.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and only this, and Turkey, which is the second country after China, has a population of 83 million. And in that regard, when you take the population of these countries, way ahead, Turkey is the number one country in the world which has prisoned the highest number of journalists, which is something that we should not feel very proud of. And are all of them terrorists? I doubt, because today's government or government officials dare to call even the students of Boğaziçi University, which is one of the most prestigious universities in Turkey, as journalists, as terrorists.
Yeah. It is
They
a
call them
label.
terrorists just because they protested the
Yeah.
newly appointed rector, which is obviously a very pro-government person who is also being accused of committing
Plagiarism.
some plagiarism crimes.
Yeah.
And
No.
and these students are simply protesting this appointment, this new rector, and it's so easy for the government officials to call these simple students as terrorists as well.
Yeah.
And then one may easily think, how about these journalists in jail then? Are they really terrorists, or are they being labeled as terrorists by the government, present government, just because they have done some reporting against the government or the ruling party?
Your case is very interesting. Are you still being sued for undermining Turkish economy along with Bloomberg?
Yes.
You are
Yes,
in that sense an economic terrorist.
Yes, yes, yes.
And
I mean,
that's one of the many lawsuits. So
yes,
please
yes.
tell us. I mean, how do you plan to bring down the Turkish
Yeah.
economy?
Think who you are talking to. I have such a power that I can easily manipulate the whole economical system in Turkey by simply saying that there is crisis in the economy.
Well, there is a crisis, so by definition, you must be guilty. No, I'm really sorry to interrupt, but there are two ways. There are two ways to handle these issues. Either you cry or you laugh, and I'm glad you're laughing, but you really had a very difficult and troublesome career just because you were trying to tell the truth. Tell us exactly what happened.
Well, things started actually in 2015. It was the time where there was still considerable suppression on the media, on the press in Turkey, but things were not that bad, I would say. But this was the time where I posted.
It's like 50 Shades of Grey. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
I know you're trying to find the words and they don't exist. Go ahead.
It was in 2015 that I just simply posted a sentence on my Twitter account, and I was critical of the judge, which actually closed the case in regards of this corruption, which they call the December 17 and 25 thing.
Right.
And I said, despite all these evidences, phone calls, videotapes, how could you not, send
how could
these
you pretend this
questionable ministers to court?
Yeah.
To court, they have not been sent to court, and the whole case has been closed. So I just simply posted a sentence of what is going on. And then I found myself being tried on high criminal court, asking a prison of sentence of more than 10 years in jail.
Wow.
Yeah. This is an ordinary life of a journalist in Turkey.
Yeah. And have you been acquitted, or are these lawsuits still?
No, I have been released. Released.
Yeah. And how about economic terrorism charges?
But I have some other trial cases. I have some other lawsuits.
Just give us a number. Just give us a number. How many lawsuits are currently ongoing against your person?
Ongoing 4 or 5, I would say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is just enough to finish this conversation, because it's gonna make me cry.
I still survive.
And you see, you're so, hey, what are you complaining about? See, you're still broadcasting. Ms. Sedef Kabaş, I want to thank you.
One more thing, Mr. Atilla. Maybe people may think that we are crazy. We are not crazy. As I said, although we do journalism at the expense of our lives, the reason why we are doing this, we really believe in this country. We really believe in the people of this country. And I believe Turkey and the people in Turkey deserve a much better future. So that's why we are trying our best to make some contribution to build such a bright future.
You're completely right. I think Turkey needs to understand that there's a price to be paid for democracy. It has never been granted. It's gained through hard labor. Ms. Sedef Kabaş, I want to thank you for the time you spent with us. God knows how many free days you have left on this planet. I'm just joking. And thank you for being so good humored despite the persecution you are receiving. Well, real Turkey viewers, this is Turkish journalism for you, or what's left of Turkish journalism, one of the few rare species here. Watch it carefully, because we may soon be extinct. To see you in the next show, Atilla Yesilada is saying goodbye from Istanbul.
Goodbye.